My name is Artemis Hartwell. I'm 34 years old, and I learned the hard way that some people love you only until loving you requires effort. 3 years. That's how long Daniel and I were together before my body betrayed me, and he followed right behind it. We met at a work conference in Chicago. He was in marketing, I was in software development, opposites in profession, identical in ambition. We hit it off immediately. He was charming in that effortless way, quick smile, steady eye contact, always leaning in like what you were saying mattered. Within a year, we moved in together. Within 2, we were house hunting. Within 3, we were picking baby names. Everything felt solid, permanent, the kind of future you don't question because it feels inevitable. Then March came. It started quietly. Fatigue that wouldn't lift, joint pain that felt like I'd run a marathon in my sleep, rashes that appeared on my arms and vanished by morning. I blamed stress, work, burnout. Then I couldn't climb the stairs without stopping halfway. Doctors, tests, more doctors, blood panels, MRIs, biopsies, months of uncertainty. Daniel drove me to some appointments at first, sat in waiting rooms scrolling on his phone. He'd squeeze my hand when I came out, but he never asked questions. By July, we had an answer. Autoimmune disorder, chronic, lifelong, manageable, but permanent. That night, we ordered Chinese takeout because I didn't have the strength to cook. I told him across the kitchen table while the steam from the noodles fogged my glasses. They figured it out, I said. He didn't look up right away. Oh yeah, what is it? I explained the treatment plan, the medication, the bad days that would still happen no matter how compliant I was. He pushed rice around his plate. Is it curable? No. So you'll have this forever? Yes. He leaned back slowly. That's a lot. It is. He went to bed early. I stayed up researching the rest of my life. The next weeks were brutal. Medication side effects, nausea, brain fog, missing work, sleeping constantly. I felt like my body had become a stranger I couldn't control. Daniel started coming home later, just grabbing drinks with the team. Late meeting. Gym. He was physically there sometimes, but emotionally, he had already begun retreating. One afternoon, 2 months after the diagnosis, I couldn't get out of bed. The pain radiated through every joint like glass under my skin. I tried to stand and collapsed back onto the mattress. I called him at work. Can you come home? I need help. I'm in the middle of something. Please, I can barely move. Take your medication. I'll be home later. When? I don't know. He came home at 9. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't showered. I'd just lain there trying not to cry. He walked into the bedroom and sighed. You're still in bed. It's bad today. Did you eat? I couldn't get up. There's food in the kitchen, Artemis. I needed you. He sat on the edge of the bed but wouldn't look at me. I don't think I can do this. My stomach dropped. Do what? This. Taking care of you. Being with someone who's sick. I'm not asking you to take care of me. I'm asking you to be my partner. It's the same thing now. It's not. He stood up and started pacing. I didn't sign up for this. When we got together, you were active. We hiked. We traveled. Now I'm what? He hesitated. You're different. I have a medical condition. I'm still me. Are you? Because the woman I fell in love with didn't spend all day in bed? The woman you fell in love with didn't have an autoimmune disorder. Silence. Then he said it. I'm not built to stay with sick people. The words landed like something physical. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I can't be the caretaker boyfriend, he added. It's not who I am. I swallowed. Understood. He blinked. That's it. What do you want me to do, Daniel begged. He didn't answer. He moved out the next week while I was at an appointment, left his key on the counter. No note. I texted him once. Understood. That was the last message I ever sent. The first month alone was hell. Not just heartbreak. The illness, too. Adjusting to medication, learning my limits, grieving the future I thought I had. But something unexpected happened. My friends showed up. They brought food, sat with me on bad days, drove me to appointments, helped me clean, did all the things Daniel claimed he couldn't. One of them asked, did he really leave because you got sick? Yeah. That's cold. Apparently that's who he is. I threw myself into understanding my condition, read medical journals, joined forums, refused to be passive. Slowly the medication started working. Not perfect, but better. I blocked Daniel everywhere. Phone, social media, email. I didn't want to know how he was doing. I didn't care. 3 months after the breakup, my doctor suggested an in-person support group. That's where I met Adrian Cole. And I had no idea then that he would become the reason Daniel would one day see my name somewhere he never expected. The first night I walked into the community center basement, I almost turned around. Metal folding chairs, fluorescent lights, a coffee pot that looked older than I was. 8 people sitting in a circle, all of us carrying invisible battles, invisible ways. I chose a chair near the door. The social worker leading the group asked us to introduce ourselves. When it was my turn, my voice felt smaller than I liked. I'm Artemis, diagnosed 3 months ago, still figuring things out. A few people nodded like they understood more than I'd said. That's when I noticed him. Adrian Cole sat 2 chairs across from me. Early 30s, calm posture, kind eyes, the kind of stillness that only comes from surviving something. When it was his turn, he said, I'm Adrian. 4 years post-diagnosis, I promise it doesn't always feel like the first year. Something in me loosened. After the meeting, he waited while I gathered my bag. First time he asked, Is it that obvious? He smiled. You were gripping the chair like it might disappear. I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. We started talking. About medication side effects, about doctors who didn't listen, about the exhaustion that wasn't just physical. He didn't pity me. He didn't flinch. He didn't say that's a lot. He said that makes sense. We got coffee after the next meeting. Then after the one after that. It wasn't romantic at first. It was survival. 2 people comparing maps of the same storm. He told me about the year after his diagnosis, how his girlfriend at the time slowly withdrew. She didn't say it like your ex did, he admitted. But the message was the same. So she left. Yeah. There was no bitterness in his voice, just clarity. Something about that steadiness made me feel safe. By month 4 of the support group, I was stronger. Back at work full-time, exercising within limits, not surviving living. One night over coffee, Adrian asked gently, Do you ever date anymore? No. Why? I stared at the steam rising from my cup. Because apparently I'm high maintenance now. That's not what you are. It's what I was told. He leaned forward slightly. Your illness is a circumstance, not your identity. I swallowed. Who wants to sign up for this? I asked quietly. Someone who understands that everyone signs up for something, he said. Yours is just visible. That stayed with me. We didn't rush anything. When our friendship shifted into something softer, it was almost imperceptible. Longer eye contact, his hand brushing mine when he passed the sugar. The way he remembered details I'd forgotten telling him. The first time he held my hand, it wasn't dramatic. It was steady. And when he looked at me, I never saw hesitation. 6 months after Daniel left, I was doing well. My health had stabilized. Adrian and I were officially dating. Slowly, intentionally. Then a mutual friend texted me. Hey, random question. Daniel's been asking about you. My chest tightened, but not in the way it used to. What about me? How you're doing? If you're still sick? If you're seeing anyone? I stared at the message. What did you tell him? That you're doing great. That you seem happier than you've been in years. Good. A minute later, another text came through. He didn't like hearing that. I almost laughed. Apparently, I was supposed to remain frozen in the moment he left me. Apparently, growth wasn't part of the narrative he'd written. Did he ask for my number? I typed. Yeah. You didn't give it to him, right? Of course not, but he seemed persistent. Persistent. The word irritated me more than I expected. For months, he hadn't checked on me. Not once. Not when I was adjusting to medication. Not when I was learning how to exist inside a body that felt foreign. But now that I was stable, now that I wasn't inconvenient, that night I told Adrian. He listened without interrupting. Do you think he regrets it? I asked. Maybe, Adrian said calmly. Does that matter? He held my gaze. Only if you let it. I realized then that Daniel's regret, if it existed, wasn't my responsibility. I didn't reach out. I didn't unblock him. I didn't give him space back in my mind. Instead, Adrian and I moved in together. Ground floor apartment, accessible bathroom, close to my doctor. Practical, yes, but also symbolic. He never complained on bad days. He celebrated good ones. He didn't treat my illness like a flaw to be tolerated. He treated it like a fact to be understood. We joined a nonprofit together that supported people with chronic illnesses, awareness campaigns, fundraisers, support group facilitation. It felt good turning pain into something useful. One evening after a particularly emotional support session, Adrian said, You should write about this. About what? About everything. About how partners leave, about what it's like, about rebuilding. I hesitated. I'm not a writer. You are. You just haven't tried yet. So I started a blog. At first, it was just processing. Then it became something bigger. Posts about chronic illness and relationships, about being abandoned at your lowest, about learning the difference between conditional love and real commitment. The posts started getting shared. People messaged me. Your story is my story. I thought I was alone. I needed to read this. I realized something Daniel never understood. What he saw as weakness was becoming power. And that's when things started to change in ways none of us expected. The first email from a publisher came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was sitting at my desk, half buried in code and half distracted by a dull ache in my wrists. Subject line, "Have you considered expanding this?" I almost deleted it. Instead, I opened it. A small press had been following my blog. They wanted to know if I'd ever thought about writing a full-length book about chronic illness, relationships, abandonment recovery, about what happens when someone leaves and you have to learn how to stay for yourself. I stared at the screen for a long time. That night I showed Adrian. He read the email twice, then looked at me with that steady, unwavering confidence I'd grown used to. "You should do it. What if I'm not good enough?" "You are, and even if you weren't, you'd become good enough." So I said yes. For 6 months I wrote every evening after work, every weekend. I poured everything into it. The diagnosis, the night over Chinese takeout, the phone call where Daniel said he couldn't come home, the moment he told me he wasn't built to stay with sick people. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't dramatize. I just told the truth. Adrian helped. He read drafts, offered perspective, added a chapter about what it's like to love someone with a chronic condition without trying to fix them. We were careful not to make it about revenge. It wasn't about him. It was about me surviving him. The book released 8 months after Daniel left. Small launch, independent bookstore, folding chairs and weak coffee again, just like the support group. But this time people showed up for me. A local newspaper did a feature. Human interest story. My photo. Adrian beside me. Our nonprofit work. The book. When the article went live, my phone started buzzing. Old coworkers, distant acquaintances, former classmates. And then a notification from LinkedIn. Daniel Brooks. I hadn't blocked him there. I opened the message slowly. "I saw the article about your book. Congratulations. I always knew you were talented." The audacity almost made me laugh. I debated ignoring it. Instead, I typed 2 words. "Thank you." He responded almost immediately. "I'd like to read it. Where can I buy it?" "Any bookstore or online." Pause. "Is it about us?" "It's about my experience. You're part of that experience. Should I be worried about how you portrayed me?" I stared at the blinking cursor. "You should read it and decide for yourself." He bought it. I know because he posted a screenshot of the purchase confirmation. Captions supporting Artemis's creative work. Proud of how she turned pain into art. Adrian saw it before I did. "He's trying to attach himself to your success," he said calmly. "He doesn't get to." But the messages kept coming. Not daily, weekly. Comments about chapters. Questions about my health. Subtle references to things we used to do together. "Remember that concert downtown best night? Hope you're feeling better these days." Your book made me think about our relationship differently. I responded minimally. 1 sentence at most, no warmth, no encouragement. Then he asked to meet. "I'd like to talk about everything. About how I handled things. About what I could have done differently. There is no as Daniel. That ended when you left. I know I messed up. I want to explain. No explanation needed. You made your choice. Can we at least get coffee as friends?" "We're not friends." He went quiet for a few days. Then he showed up at one of our nonprofit events. Public, open to anyone. He had every right to be there. I saw him across the room before he saw me. Adrian followed my gaze and understood immediately. "Want me with you?" he asked softly. "Yes." Daniel approached during a break. "Hi," he said like we'd run into each other at a grocery store. "Hi. This event is impressive. What you're doing here is amazing." "Thank you." I read the whole book. "Okay. I'm not portrayed well in it." I wrote honestly. "You made me sound heartless." I wrote what happened. He shifted uncomfortably. "I was scared." Being scared doesn't excuse abandoning someone. He looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find footing. That's when Adrian stepped forward, extending his hand politely. "I don't think we've met. I'm Adrian." Daniel shook it stiffly. "I'm her ex." "I know," Adrian replied calmly. Chapter 3. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You're a cautionary tale," Adrian added gently. "Not cruelly, just factually." Silence thickened between us. "I should go," Daniel muttered. "Probably," Adrian said evenly. Daniel left. I exhaled slowly. "You okay?" Adrian asked. Yes. And I was. Because this time I wasn't alone in the room. 2 weeks later, Daniel sent a long email. Apologetic, detailed, full of therapy language. "I've grown. I've changed. I understand what I did wrong. I was overwhelmed. I was dealing with my own mental health. I regret everything. I miss you." I read it twice and felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No longing. Just distance. I showed it to Adrian. "He wants forgiveness," Adrian said quietly, "so he can stop being the villain in his own story." That's what I thought. "Are you going to respond?" "No." I deleted it. And that should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because 3 months later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, and the voice on the other end changed everything. Hi, is this Artemis Hartwell? Yes. This is Margaret Lawson from Caldwell and Pierce Publishing. I almost dropped the phone. Caldwell and Pierce wasn't a small press. It was a major publishing house, national distribution, real marketing budgets, real tours, real reach. We've read your book, she continued, and we believe it deserves a much wider audience. I sat down slowly. We'd like to reprint it, expanded edition, additional chapters, broader scope, and we'd like your partner to co-author sections from his perspective. I looked across the room at Adrian. He was watching my face, trying to read what was happening. They want both of us, I mouthed. His eyebrows lifted slightly. I swallowed. Yes, we're interested. The next 4 months were intense. Rewriting, expanding, deepening, adding research, resources, real stories from others who'd reached out to me. This version wasn't just about abandonment anymore. It was about rebuilding. It was about choosing someone who chooses you back. When the expanded edition launched, it didn't stay quiet. It hit bestseller lists within weeks. National morning shows invited us to speak. Medical conferences reached out. Universities, advocacy panels. Suddenly, my name wasn't just in chronic illness forums. It was everywhere. And every time I stood beside Adrian during interviews, every time we spoke about partnership and resilience, I knew somewhere Daniel was watching. I didn't have to guess for long. A mutual friend called one evening. He asked about you again. I sighed lightly. What now? He wanted to know if you were seeing someone seriously. I am. I told him you're engaged. Silence stretched on my end. You told him that? Well, you are right. I looked down at my left hand. Adrian had proposed a month earlier in our living room. No grand gestures, no crowd, just him kneeling slightly awkwardly because of his own joint pain holding out a simple ring. I choose you, he had said. On good days, on bad days, on days we can barely get out of bed, I choose you. Yes, I'd whispered, I choose you too. Now I smiled softly into the phone. Yes, I am. How did he react, I asked. He went quiet. Then he said he made the biggest mistake of his life. I felt nothing. No triumph, no revenge, just clarity. He said he'd give anything to go back. But he can't, I replied. No, he can't. A week later, Daniel sent one final message through LinkedIn. I heard you're engaged. I'm happy for you. Truly. I wish I'd been stronger. I wish I'd stayed. I read it once, then closed the app. There was nothing left to say. The wedding was small, intimate, close friends, family, the support group members who had watched me rebuild from the ground up, people who stayed. As I walked down the aisle toward Adrian, I didn't think about Daniel. Not even once. Because the man waiting for me at the end of that aisle had never once made me feel like I was too much. He had never sighed at my bad days. He had never treated my illness like a burden. He had chosen me when choosing me wasn't convenient. That was the difference. And that's what Daniel never understood. 12 months after the expanded edition released, it was still selling. International translations. Medical schools using it as recommended reading. My name appeared in places I never imagined. On talk show banners, on bestseller lists, in airport bookstores. One evening, Adrian showed me something on his phone. Daniel had posted about the new edition. Still so proud of Artemis's journey. Amazing to see how far she's come. Adrian laughed softly. He's trying to rewrite history. He doesn't get to, I said. Because pride implies participation. And he hadn't participated. He had exited. He had chosen the easy path. But the story wasn't over yet. 2 years after he left me in that bedroom, 2 weeks after our second anniversary, something unexpected happened again. A documentary team reached out. They wanted to feature us. Not just the book, but the relationship. The nonprofit. The broader conversation about chronic illness and abandonment. Filming started in our apartment. They asked about Daniel. I answered honestly. I don't hate him, I said on camera. He showed me what conditional love looks like. Without that, I wouldn't have recognized unconditional love when it arrived. When the documentary aired, it streamed nationally, and once again my name appeared everywhere. But this time it wasn't just about the illness. It was about resilience, about partnership, about rebuilding, about staying. And somewhere out there, Daniel was seeing it all unfold without him. It has been 2 years since Daniel stood at the foot of our bed and told me he wasn't built to stay with sick people. 2 years since he walked out of the apartment and left his key on the counter like I was an expired lease. 20 months since he first saw my name in that newspaper article. 18 months since the email I never answered. 12 months since the expanded edition hit the bestseller list. And 1 month since Adrian and I celebrated our first wedding anniversary. My health is stable now. Not perfect. There are still bad days. Days when my joints ache like old memories. Days when fatigue rolls in without warning. But I am not alone in those days. That's the difference. The third edition of the book released last week. Updated again. More research, more stories, more resources. It's been translated into 6 languages, used in medical schools, shared in support groups across the world. Sometimes I still pause when I see my name on the cover. Artemis Hartwell. Not because of Daniel, because of who I became after him. A mutual friend told me recently that Daniel still talks about me. He says he regrets leaving, that he didn't understand what real love meant back then, that if he had another chance, he'd do it differently. I nodded when I heard that. Maybe he would. Maybe he has changed. Maybe therapy taught him something. Maybe he finally understands what it means to stay. But growth doesn't grant access. Regret doesn't reopen doors. And love isn't retroactive. One night, Adrian asked quietly while we were washing dishes, "Does it ever bother you that he's still watching?" No, not even a little. I dried my hands and leaned against the counter. He's observing a life he chose not to be part of. Adrian smiled faintly. She's the before, he corrected, gently catching himself with a grin. Sorry, he's the before, I'm the after. I laughed. Exactly. Daniel wasn't the only one seeing my name everywhere. Thousands of people were. People who wrote to me saying I thought my life was over when my partner left. People who said, your story gave me hope. People who needed proof that illness doesn't make you unlovable. That abandonment doesn't mean unworthy. That being left at your worst doesn't prevent you from becoming your best. The real twist wasn't that Daniel regretted leaving. It wasn't that he cried when he heard I was engaged. It wasn't even that he watched my success unfold without him. The real twist is this. If he had stayed, none of this would have happened. I wouldn't have written the blog. I wouldn't have turned pain into purpose. I wouldn't have met Adrian in that fluorescent-lit basement with folding chairs and weak coffee. Daniel leaving created space. Space for someone stronger. Space for a different kind of love. Space for me to become the woman I am now. The night he told me he wasn't built to stay with sick people, I thought my life was ending. In reality, it was rearranging. I didn't beg. I didn't chase. I said understood. And I meant it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is accept someone's limitations and let them walk away. He left because I became inconvenient. Because loving me required effort. Because staying would have demanded depth he didn't have yet. But Adrian stayed when staying was hard. When medication side effects kept me up all night. When I doubted my own body. When I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. He stayed. And that's the only metric that matters. I'm 34. Married to a man who sees past the illness to the person, building a life that matters, writing stories that help people, learning that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well. It's building better. It's loving deeper. It's allowing the people who left to remain in the chapter where they chose to exit. Daniel once said he wasn't built to stay with sick people. He was right. He wasn't built for it, but someone else was. And that someone else is standing beside me now. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Some doors close permanently, some choices echo forever, and sometimes the people who leave make room for the people who stay. Those are the ones who become family. Those are the ones who prove that love isn't about being present when it's convenient. It's about staying when it's impossibly hard. That's the love I found. That's the love I kept. And that's the love Daniel will spend the rest of his life knowing he walked away from.